Hi, everyone. On today's episode of the Filmographers podcast, we're going to be discussing the Phoenician Scheme, the 12th feature film from writer-director Wes Anderson. I'm Michael Moreci, and with me, as always, is Keir Graff.
In addition to discussing the Phoenician Scheme, which premiered in Cannes on May 18th and releases in the United States on May 30th, we'll look at our own connection to Wes Anderson's films, discuss our favorites, and see how his latest fits into his fascinating filmography.
Keir, let's start with our own Wes Anderson beginnings. His first movie, Bottle Rocket, was... I had to look this up. I was actually surprised. And boy, talk about cutting the tree and counting the rings of your own life. Bottle Rocket was released nearly 30 years ago. 1996 is when that came out. Was that the first Wes Anderson movie that you saw?
I'm pretty sure it was. I mean, when you go back that far, things get a little hazy for me. But I do have a memory of renting the video. And I'm pretty sure it was based solely on the fact that it looked like an interesting indie movie. I did subscribe to film magazines back in the day, Film Threat, Movie Line, and Premiere. But before the World Wide Web, it's, wild to think about how often it was just about browsing the video store. And it's crazy to think about how many films I checked out based just on the packaging. Regardless, I remember liking the movie quite a bit and thinking that Wes Anderson was an interesting new director. But, the more I think about it, it has to have been the first one because, had I seen Rushmore first, it would have been a totally different viewing experience. So, I remember thinking he was an interesting new person, but it wasn't like an aha moment or anything like that. What was your first Wes Anderson, Mike?
It was also Bottle Rocket, but I actually have a question for you because now I feel like a little bit distracted because you've opened up the nostalgia well with the movie line and the publications you mentioned. Do you remember what was the phone call? Or the phone number that you'd have to call to get movie times? Is it just Movie Phone? Was that
my God. So I remember being aware of Movie Phone, but I always felt like that was a big city thing because, I grew up not in the big city like you, Mike, but I grew up in Missoula, Montana, where we didn't have that many theaters when I was starting out and cutting my teeth as a cineast. So I just remember always getting the film listings from the newspaper.
That's generally why I did mine, because I think Movie Phone was also a charge, if I'm remembering correctly. Like, it wasn't like the cost of a normal phone call, which wild back in the day, you charge for phone calls depending on where you're calling and, if it was a service or whatever. So, man, talk about a time capsule. There's audience members who have no idea what we're talking about right now.
Yes.
But look up Movie Phone. It's an interesting relic. I wish that still existed. It'd be fun to call a service to be like, now playing Final Reckoning, 5:30, 9 o'clock.
I don't think anybody would have the patience for it because it's just like this idea that you have to wait through all these options, while you're meanwhile, running up a small bill on minute by minute on Movie Phone. People couldn't do it.
No, I don't think they could. No, where our patience is, the internet has destroyed our patience. But getting back on track, yes, Bottle Rocket was my first Wes Anderson movie. Anyone listening to this show has heard you and I talk. Like, we're both, children of 90s cinema, which is, by the way, the greatest decade of cinematic history. And the mid 90s was definitely a peak for me. I was 15, 16. So I was really coming into my own with my ability to go see movies, rent movies, have that independence. So I was just like rapidly consuming, one movie after another. And I had discovered independent film at this time. It was, I was reading Premiere Magazine and, I had, thank God, had Siskel and Ebert in my own backyard. Cause as you say, I did come from the big city, even though Siskel and Ebert were, available nationally, like they were, they're hometown boys, in my I thought they just existed in everyone's town. I got older till I realized like, oh, not everyone has a Siskel and Ebert in their town, city, suburb, whatever. But I was really into independent cinema, and Bottle Rocket was obviously one of the big indie movies at that time. Like you, there is a certain haze to the time. I don't specifically remember watching Bottle Rocket. Like, I specifically remember seeing Pulp Fiction. I specifically remember seeing Clerks. I don't remember specifically watching Bottle Rocket. I do remember enjoying it, but like you, I think that's a great way to put it. I didn't have like an aha moment the way I did with other directors. I've come to love it now. Don't get me wrong. I actually just watched it with my two sons recently, like within the last few months, because my older son discovered his short movies on Netflix. But yeah, at the time, I guess I didn't understand fully what Wes Anderson was about or what he was doing or his inspirations. Like, I hadn't seen Godard yet. I didn't know French New Wave cinema. Like, I didn't get the things he was tapping into and his sense of humor. Like, when I was 16, like Bottle Rocket's humor, sure, a lot of it just like right over my head. But I was still committed to Anderson. He was still like one of those buzzy, independent auteurs, so to speak. So when Rushmore came out, like, I was all in. I convinced like half of my dorm to go see it. It played at our college cinema, and I saw it opening night, and I loved that one. Unlike Bottle Rocket, I did love Rushmore immediately, and my love for it has only grown.
Right. So I'm a little older than you. We'll just say a little. And so when Rushmore came out, this blows my mind. I was already married. But
wow. Holy cow.
Yeah, yes. See, you had no idea how much older I am. But I connected to Rushmore in a big, big way. I mean, I absolutely loved it. I loved everything about it, especially the character of Max. I felt seen. And I'll explain why. I was different from Max in that I was never a joiner at school. I was absolutely the guy who rounded up his friends to execute grandiose schemes, many of them theatrical. I staged Custer's Last Stand in a vacant lot by my house when I was in grade school.
Wow.
A few years later, I made Super 8 films with my friends. I was always the Cecil B. DeMille Jr. One of my crowning achievement was an epic 5-reel Super 8 film called A Day to Die, starring myself as a doomed bandolier-wearing outlaw named Rick Hawk. Something I could totally see Max doing. Later I formed bands, I put on shows, but I was always kind of like this entrepreneur who wanted attention and but had a big vision and needed to talk a lot of friends into helping me execute these things. So even though I was an adult when I saw Rushmore, I'm not sure I fully grasped the sadness inherent in Max's character because I just identified with him so much. I have seen the movie many times since then, and I've come to learn a lot about him and myself. But anyway, it's terrific. It was just a movie that I felt like this is my movie. And I know a lot of other people felt that way as well. It was an indie hit. I'm not saying I discovered it or anything. Many of us discovered it and many of us loved it. But it was so good that I felt a little underwhelmed the first time I saw the Royal Tenenbaums. And I think that was only because I built Rushmore up so much in my mind that I wasn't ready to allow Anderson to equal it. I was almost prepared to be disappointed, or I just couldn't process it fully. But upon subsequent viewings, I definitely recognized Tenenbaums as being just as good, if not better, just different. It has such an amazing cast, such an amazing tone. And as we'll talk about, in general, as we talk about Anderson, it had characters worth caring about.
Oh boy. I'm not going to jump ahead because I do want to talk about Tenenbaums because I adore the Royal Tenenbaums. It's just this perfect synthesis of a classic dysfunctional family novel that doesn't exist but does exist in the cinematic form. What's the Tolstoy quote? Every dysfunctional family. You're the learned one.
It's learned, Pepsi. Learned. I'm so learned I can quote Simpsons. Every happy family is happy in the same way. Every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way.
Something like that. Yeah. But you get this sense of a grand, epic, familial tale. And it's not a movie that spans decades or generation. It spans a pretty condensed period of time, minus the opening where you see the kids as kids. The aesthetic of that movie hadn't been at that time overdone. And when you really look at the aesthetic, it's funny because I think what people think about now is the Wes Anderson Wes Anderson aesthetic is the Royal Tenenbaums. Like that aesthetic it exists a little bit in the typography in Rushmore and some of the symmetrical shots of Rushmore, but it's not there a ton. And it's certainly not in Bottle Rocket. Like Tenenbaums made his visual aesthetic template. Like that is really where it begins.
Well, and just also his love affair with, like another one of his contemporaries, Noah Baumbach, like the love affair with kind of like shabby 70s New York, this kind of like painstakingly recreated vintage look. And of course, Wes Anderson has gone on to do, he's become more kind of continental. He's spent more time abroad. His love of all things vintage has encompassed a much broader vision, including maybe Tintin comic books. But like, yes, but I agree completely. Like the Tenenbaums is where we start to see the birth of what we now think of as Wes Anderson.
100%. So at that time, it's fresh and it's interesting and it feels so different and so unique and so personal. Like it felt so personal. The way he shoots the movie like this, like pageant, and there's a pageantry aspect to it, which I feel like he loses because there's actually a playwright, Gwyneth Paltrow in the movie. There's actual people creating pageantry within the pageantry that exist in this film where like he's still doing the pageant minus the actual connection with the characters, and connection to characters is something and loss therein is something we'll discuss more surely. But like it just felt like everything felt so weaved together, this beautiful static, again, for lack of a better term, like pageantry aesthetic felt so connected to people trying to put on a pageantry, trying to feel like a happy family, when underneath it there's such deep and real sadness and regret and all these really touching, beautiful moments. I mean, everyone quotes it all the time when Ben Stiller says, "I've had a really rough year, Dad." Like even saying it like almost makes me cry, like thinking of it. Like it's so perfect and so simple and so clear. I adore that movie. Like you said, the performances are absolutely wonderful. It feels so real. It feels so lived in. It was just all of the things that we know Wes Anderson can do crystallized into this perfect package. It's a perfect movie in my opinion. And
even though there are some signs of the kind of mannered things that will appear in later Wes Anderson films, the emotions feel deep and real in his first movies. I think about, oh my God, Bill Murray and Rushmore for sure. Just the kind of crushing sadness but yes, Rushmore is whimsical in some ways, but it's also it's a deeply emotional film for its dual male leads, and it's very affecting. And then Tenenbaums, for sure, you feel for these characters, even though they're wearing these kind of ridiculous costumes.
Yeah, I mean, like Max Fisher has a hole in his heart that you understand what the hole is, and you understand what he's doing, why he's doing it to try to fill it. Like it's very simple and clear. And there's actually, we'll get to his next movie, but there's also the great line I have to make mention of, like just when Richie is walking through, I think it's the cemetery, and the guy's like, "All right, Bomber, all right." That's so great.
Yes.
He's this tennis pro that everyone just kind of knows, and he has this iconic look, and he's got his headband and his long hair, and Luke Wilson looks so cool. Like it's just such an awesome movie. Then he followed it with Life Aquatic, which to me, I want to get your thoughts. I mean, a miss, I thought. It's a movie that I did not connect to really in any way. I know people do love it, but to me, it's a miss. And that's where I think you start to see the path start to go in a much different, from what we love about those first three movies, about real characters who really have something missing and they're trying to find it in different ways, and blended with this like very unique aesthetic. Then the path starts to go in a different direction. And I think a Life Aquatic, I think some people would argue it happens later. I would argue it happens at Life Aquatic.
Yeah, for me, it happened during Life Aquatic as well. I remember the experience of watching it quite vividly, and I'm sure other people have had this feeling when they go to the movies too. We've talked about often on this podcast how when we go to the movies, we always enter wanting to love them. We never, or or at least be entertained. Like we never walk in thinking like, well, I'm not gonna like this. I'm gonna shit all over this. Never, never, never. I remember the experience of watching that movie and wanting to like it so much, I was kind of talking myself into liking it, even though I knew I was lying to myself because I didn't really like it. Of course, as with any Anderson film, there were things I did like about it. They're always fun to look at, like no question. They're always fun to look at, but it was kind of a hollow viewing experience because the characters weren't working for me. I love the concept. I love the Steve Zissou, Jacques Cousteau kind of character or whatever. But
Sure.
At the same time, I remember thinking like, oh, he's really into the little model ship and he's into these cool little shots and the little red hats. And it started to occur to me that he was and we were disappearing into his aesthetic obsessions. And that might, even though like the Darjeeling Express looked like a very different kind of film, that might be one of the reasons I never even saw it. So I to this day, I still haven't seen the Darjeeling Express. So you'll have to fill us in on that one, Mike. What did you think of that one?
I did enjoy it. I be frank, I liked it even less than Life Aquatic. I won't say much because we're not here specifically to talk about this, but there is a moment, I mentioned this the other day, that I think has become kind of a metaphor, I guess you can say, for where Wes Anderson has gone, where the three leads, Schwartzman, Adrian Brody, and it's Owen Wilson, right? They're the three in Darjeeling?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's those three. And they are trying, there's a river gets flooded and they're trying to save these boys in the river, and Schwartzman and Owen Wilson manage to save theirs and they get across the river. Then Adrian Brody arrives with a dead boy in his arms holding him, and he says, "I didn't save mine." And I feel like it's the coldest, most cynical, selfish reaction where these characters, and maybe that's the point, I guess, but like it's also just so, again, staged and lifeless, and like the fact that he came out of this situation and made it all about him, like I didn't save mine, really feels like to me where the emotional spectrum that Wes Anderson's been on, and it's not only Wes Anderson, honestly. Like, take a step back, I think I also attribute this to a little bit to Noah Baumbach, because prior to that, his writing partner was Owen Wilson, and Owen Wilson, I think, was his heart. I think Owen Wilson was Wes Anderson's heart, and then Noah Baumbach. You've seen his movies; they're dark and they're cynical and they're mean. Like, I'm not saying I don't like them, but I am saying those movies they're mean-spirited movies, and there gets to be a meanness in Wes Anderson movies, starting in Zissou, where he is pretty shitty character in a lot of ways. Darjeeling Limited, they're just unpleasant. There's an unpleasantness to it, and that's very much a Noah Baumbach hallmark, I would say.
That's a fascinating observation, and I would love to look into that more. I would love to know more about, I would love to find out if Anderson has said things about the changing writing partnership or whatever. I know Owen Wilson has had some pretty well publicized, mental challenges, and I don't know even the timeline. So if that coincided with the end of that writing partnership or something, but I love that because I do feel like, who doesn't love Owen Wilson, right? And like the idea that he might have been Anderson's heart is very compelling to me.
I think so. I really do. I've thought about that a lot because I do think that his, and this is very, obviously very sad, but his attempt, his suicide attempt, as like you said, well documented, was around this time, and he might not have been writing as much. And you're right. Everyone loves Owen Wilson. Like, I love him as his writing. I love his acting. I would kill to be able to do a good Owen Wilson impersonation. Like, he just has such a great voice. Like, I would love to be able to do an Owen Wilson. Yeah, wow. What my book presupposes is, speaking of being Custer, Keir.
Yes, right. I didn't have a fringed buckskin jacket, sadly.
The missing ingredient. But tell us, I didn't see Fantastic Mr. Fox turning things around, but you have. I did. Yeah, I did.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So we're talking in some ways, we're going to talk about this general decline of our opinion of Wes Anderson films towards the middle of his career. However, I want to, shout out to Fantastic Mr. Fox, which I thought was indeed fantastic. The look is delightful. Obviously, that's become iconic, well known, the stop motion animation, but where they were also striving for kind of a lack of perfection, which in the way they animate the fur, which is one of the things that makes it so charming, and which it occurs to me now too is kind of an interesting metaphor, because what I like most about the early Wes Anderson films is that even though they are mannered and they are, he's very intensely interested in aesthetics, but there's a looseness to them and some rough edges and some humanness, particularly in the performances that plays nicely with the kind of perfection of the look that he's trying to develop. As he goes further in his career, the films look more and more perfect, and the performances, to me, become very two-dimensional. But Fantastic Mr. Fox is a film that has these kind of rough visual edges, but the performances are great. I mean, yes, we're talking about stop motion animation, but like there's real warmth in the vocal work by George Clooney and the rest of the cast, like really lovely. And if you haven't looked up the behind the scenes footage of Clooney in particular, doing his vocal takes, it is a must-see TV. They're so great. Like watching him kind of roll around and like physically enact, like a lot of people who were acting, like I know that like Dan Castellaneta for Homer Simpson gesticulates wildly and really physically performs. And that's how he gets these great vocal performances. Clooney does the same, and it is delightful watching. But so I think that Anderson really found the story in what is honestly one of Roald Dahl's lesser books. There's not much to the book, and that movie is just delightful. It became a family favorite with my kids. I still like it. It's a heist movie, Mike. We like heist movies
with George Clooney. I'm as you're saying this, I got to watch that video. But as you're saying this, I'm like, wow, it's a heist movie with George Clooney. Like, how have I not?
Yeah. It's to me, that is just a home run movie. And I will say, like, one of my favorites. We're talking very critically about a lot of Anderson films, but I have a lot of favorite films. Certainly I love Bottle Rocket quite a bit. Rushmore, top tier. Royal Tenenbaums, top tier. Fantastic Mr. Fox, top tier as well. But then he followed it with Moonrise Kingdom, which is a film that I know a lot of people like more than I do. To me, it kind of continued what I saw as his decline into what could be called kitsch, I think. I know a lot of people connect to it and feel it's a more tender film about adolescent romance and other things. But I think it's really where Anderson starts to make movies that can be easily parodied, because it feels like his obsession is more about the surface of things and not the deep emotions that move the story. A lot of the look and feel of that movie is the kind of stuff. I mean, there's that great SNL parody of Wes Anderson where it's like, dear homeowners, may we come into your house and murder you? And then, no, you may not. I'm misquoting everything today, but I feel like Moonrise Kingdom is really where you see the kind of Wes Anderson almost parodying his own work in terms of the look of things. But I know other people love that movie. I respect that. It didn't connect with me.
Yeah. And I think, well, I will say this. I think that's the thing. Like the reason we're going through this journey of Wes Anderson is to show that like we have connected deeply to a lot of his movies, and we value them and appreciate them. And they're kind of, in a way, came of age with them or meant something to our coming of age. So there's a lot of it there that is meaningful to us. But, I don't know if he's divisive, because I don't think he's that like, he's doing anything like that, for lack of a better term, controversial to be divisive. But I do think there is a camp of people, and I think you and I would fall into that camp. And it's been said, I'm not coming up with this now, but like it's been said that he's kind of become a cover band of his own self, and I find it hard to disagree with that sentiment, with that idea. My overarching thought on Anderson is this. He is at his best when he remembers that the characters in his movies, and you touched on this a bit just now, Keir, and I think it's a great point, like the characters in his movies are human beings that not only have wants, desires, and fully realized emotions, but they express, most importantly with him, they express these wants, desires, and fully realized emotions in clear ways. He's at his worst when he treats these characters instead as set decorations, more or less, pieces to be dressed up like dolls and arranged in very, very particular ways, no different than a chair in a room or a choice of paint color on a wall. And I don't know, it's hard for me to get past that distinction, and you can clearly see when he's on one side and when he's on the other. And unfortunately, most of his movies in my opinion, from Life Aquatic on, are more interested in the orchestration of his well-staged pageantries than the people who are in them.
We talk a lot about Steven Soderbergh because our whole first season was on Steven Soderbergh. And listeners, if you're just joining us for the first time, please check out our first season on Steven Soderbergh, where we journey through every single one of his films. But it's become, Soderbergh's career has become a touch point for so many things, and a lens through which we view filmmaking in so many ways, because we learned so much from studying his career. And in a way, I think you could almost say that Wes Anderson is the anti-Soderbergh, because Soderbergh started out with an idea of being, his first film, Sex, Lies, and Videotape, is much looser. But over the next few films, he kind of was journeying more towards a formal way of making films. And it didn't work for him. And he had a complete reset. And then the whole rest of his career became about loosening up and loosening up and loosening up and being in the moment and accepting imperfections and letting actors bring what they bring, and not having the camera perfectly set all the time. And it's just so fascinating. And like, that's how he found his joy in filmmaking. And that's how his films kind of come alive. There's one critic we often pick on who always thinks that he's kind of cool and cerebral. He may be in his personal life, but as a filmmaker, he is really open to what the moment brings. And Wes Anderson is the complete opposite of that. Wes Anderson is not about what the moment brings. He is about executing the vision that he has in his mind, that he's undoubtedly storyboarded, that he sees in his he's got a vision and he pulls it off. And sure, he pulls it off impeccably. And it's kind of fascinating, but it's also become kind of airless and lifeless.
And it also has this, stifling effect. I never like it when, and I'm trying to think of a comp, and it'll come to me in a moment, but when somebody's acting and they're clearly acting like, oh, this person's acting like they are in a Wes Anderson movie, rather than the naturalism or their own ability to bring their craft to the role, rather than being like, the role has been predetermined and they're going to talk a certain way and they're going to act a certain way. I'm in a Wes Anderson movie. You're in a Wes Anderson movie. How'd you get here? You're here because you're here. Oh, but I guess I'm here. It's like, okay, fuck it, get it, like, and there's just that that stiflingness to it that's so unlike somebody like Soderbergh, who has that looseness, who's letting characters, and that's why, they both get so much repeat business. So I can't speak on the behalf of actors, because plenty of people come back to Wes Anderson, and that's totally fine. But I think people also come back to Soderbergh because he allows freedom and flexibility and creativity, where I just don't know how you get that. Like, you want to be part of Wes Anderson's vision, and I'm sure that's satisfying in some way, but like, the vision is determined probably before, as an actor, you step foot on set.
I can only guess, because I don't know, but like, I imagine that for many actors, the appeal of being in a Wes Anderson film is fun costumes and play acting. Thinking about, say, the characters of Tom Hanks and Bryan Cranston in the Phoenician Scheme, which I promise we'll talk about in a moment. But those, I think that it's probably a fun shoot that doesn't last very long. They come in for a week or a few days or whatever, and they get to just ham it up. Actors are people who, some of them like to go deep and be real, but they also just like to have fun. And I think that it's probably really fun to do those, but I don't know that I would be hard pressed to imagine that's very artistically satisfying.
I would agree. Now, while we have spent a lot of time talking about some movies we did enjoy, there's one more I think we should talk about that, like, you said the phrase top tier, that I would say is he did sneak in a top tier as well. We know what that is, Keir.
I know what that is. The Grand Budapest Hotel, top tier.
Indeed. Yeah, the Grand Budapest Hotel is an absolute top tier. I know you really love this movie, Keir. Why do you love the Grand Budapest Hotel so much?
Well, I mean, it certainly has the, iconic and labored over look of an Anderson films.
No.
And it has a terrific ensemble cast. But two things stand out for me. One, I just got to give some credit to Ralph Fiennes, who's absolutely phenomenal as the lady killing concierge of the hotel. It's a delightful performance. He's so watchable. But even more than that, I would say the plot is wonderful. Even though it's fairly picaresque, it never sags for a minute. It just teems with incident, plot twists, subterfuge, surprises, cliffhangers, etc. There's even escape from prison. In a way, this takes some of my favorite things from Fantastic Mr. Fox, I would say, but also foreshadows some things that don't quite work in the Phoenician Scheme. And it's strange to say, here I'm kind of praising like the antic qualities of Grand Budapest Hotel. Grand Budapest Hotel does not have the depth of character in some of these other films that we've praised, but it does have this mixture of all the other things that work in the strongest Anderson movies. And it's just a hell of a lot of fun. It's never boring. It is quite simply terrific.
I'm with you on that. Like, I really, really love it for all those reasons. It's fun. It feels honest. It feels there's truth. It's emotional truth. There's a lot to love to it. I don't love, the last one I'll mention because it leads us right to the Phoenician Scheme is Asteroid City. I don't love Asteroid City, but I do like it. I do think there's some interesting things going on there. It looks a little different. You've got this Nevada or New Mexico, whatever it is, landscape. You've got the weird alien stuff. Like there's some cool, fun stuff going on. He's loosening up a bit, and there is some stuff about loss and regret. But like, again, he just feels like there in Asteroid City, it feels like there's this pressure cooker of emotions that like he's just constantly just pushing the lid on. Like it's just like this pot, this cauldron that's bubbling that he just has to like shove down. Wherein other movies, more successful movies, he's able to, and it's not, he never gets into the realm of melodrama. Okay. Like he doesn't, but he does in Royal Tenenbaums did enough to convey or Grand Budapest Hotel convey longing and regret and sadness and things like that. Where in Asteroid City, like it was sort of there and he got it out just a little bit, but just the stiflingness of it kept it just too far down and just didn't achieve what it could have achieved, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Asteroid City. I mean, I think I liked it a little less than you did. It had some things I did like, but I didn't ultimately connect with it. And I'm not even going to talk about French Dispatch, which came out a couple years before that. To me, it kind of, given that it was kind of an anthology piece, like it was 3 stories, it kind of gave me even less ability to connect with any one of them.
In theaters this Halloween comes a new vision of horror like you've never seen before. From the twisted mind of Wes Anderson, it's the midnight coterie of sinister intruders.
Keir, I've got a $5 bill burning a hole in my pocket. Want to go grab a cup of coffee?
Well, we could, but did you know that for $5 you can buy your own coffee, brew it at home, and make like 30 cups for the price of one?
You can?
Life comes at you fast, Mike.
Oh man, it does. But what would I do with all this money? I mean, I'm American. I can't save it.
Funny you should ask, because on our Patreon, we have a $5 level that anyone can join. You get all our regular episodes ad-free and exclusives you'll only find on Patreon. And get this.
I'm listening.
If you join at the $5 level, we'll send you a Filmographers coffee mug. So not only will you be able to afford more coffee by brewing it at home, you'll also have something to hold it in. And we have left and right-handed versions.
Ooh, this keeps getting better and better.
Find us at patreon.com/the Filmographers podcast. That's patreon.com/the Filmographers podcast. And hey, if you're not like Mike and you don't have a $5 bill burning a hole in your pocket, that's no problem. You can join for free and get access to all our regular episodes.
It's true what they say, Keir. We are the movie nice guys.
We now return to Wes Anderson's Pan Up, Pan Down French song, The End.
Viens, suis-moi, je connais une...
Wow, that was amazing, I think.
All right, Keir, all this talk about Wes Anderson brings us at last to his latest release, The Phoenician Scheme. Before we dive in, though, one more aside. I do want to ask listeners for a favor. There's something you could do for us, something very simple, fast, free. Leave us a review or a rating. Can't express how important this is to help. Look, it just gets the algorithm to push us forward in searches. It helps us get, garner positive visibility. So please take a few moments, do it now even, and leave us a rating or review on whatever podcast platform you're using.
We really, really appreciate it. And we'd love to get the number of our ratings to grow and grow as we prepare for season 2, which is coming soon. Have we announced the director we're studying in our second season, Mike?
We have not, but should we do that now?
I know listener Mark S. and others have said enough already, announced season 2, but I feel like we want to roll it out in a creative way with a nice little package. And so while I hate to feel like a tease, and I'm sorry, Mark, and everybody else who's waiting for us to make this announcement, I want to hold off just a few more weeks because I want to do it. I don't want to let it just kind of slip out. I want to do it right.
Yes, deal. I cannot wait till we do. We're going to make a proper thing out of it. We'll wear tuxedo t-shirts. We'll do the whole thing. It's going to be something. We will make sure of it. But for right now, let's get back to Wes Anderson, who is not the subject of our second season. I think we just did it. I think that was our second season, was the first half of this episode. Keir, where did the Phoenician Scheme fall for you? Anderson you enjoy, like Budapest, Tenenbaums, etc., or Anderson you do not enjoy, like the aforementioned movies we've already talked about?
I am so sad to report that it falls into the camp of movies that I did not enjoy. Honestly, I really didn't enjoy it. It feels like the nadir of Anderson's career so far. And, it's hard to... I hate to make pronouncements like that because sometimes it just has to do with how we're feeling on a particular day or whatever, but I was feeling perfectly fine and I was hoping to enjoy it. So yeah, I just, as I said before, I didn't like The French Dispatch and I didn't really care for Asteroid City. And I like this one even less. Yes, of course it looks fantastic, but we expect that. And it really doesn't matter when the characters are this flat and the antic humor feels so forced and the dialogue feels so redundant. It's hard to know where to begin or what the biggest problem is. Although, okay, actually, I do know what the biggest problem is. And it's what we've been saying all along. It's character. It's characters that are sketches. They're like, the characters are like, you see when they give the costume awards at the Oscars and they give these like sketches of characters and you see what they're wearing and like how they've been visualized. The characters feel like those literally sketches.
They're just pre-production.
Yeah. They feel like costume models. And then the second biggest problem is the dialogue, which, as you nicely spoofed earlier in the episode, it's so like, I'm going to say something really clever and then I'm going to repeat it and then I'm going to say it back again and then somebody's going to repeat it to me and then we're going to like have an ironic pause or whatever. And it just feels so stagey. It's like, I don't know, Pinter dialogue that without the depth or something like that. And then, of course, the plot. But now I feel like I'm saying a house could be saved if only had a different architect and a completely different set of blueprints. Mike, without giving spoilers, what do you feel like was the biggest problem with the plot?
Yeah, there's so much that I could say that you brought up all points that we are in complete agreement about. We saw it together, and I felt fine. It was a sunny day in Chicago. We were feeling good.
It was a beautiful
Friday.
day.
It was a beautiful day. Let me stick to the plot. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. You know, I don't mind a good MacGuffin. I don't mind like, oh, the plot didn't matter. It's like that, you know, that annoying thing that I think we've talked about before, Raiders of the Lost Ark, where people are like, well, if Indiana Jones wasn't part of it, like Nazis would just open the Ark of Covenant and all burned alive. And it's like, yeah. But you're missing the whole point. The whole point is that Indiana Jones is fun to watch, and Marion is fun to watch, and we love this sort of thing, and they're just cool characters, and it looks great, and etc. So, like, it's okay not to have a substantive plot. Shit, Notorious, the whole thing. What are they even after? Doesn't matter. We created the MacGuffin, right? The problem with the Phoenician Scheme, and it's hard not to bring character into this, is that, like, the whole plot doesn't matter. Like, I don't know. So what Benicio del Toro's character, Zsa, what Zsa is trying to make, I have no idea what the hell he's even trying to do. A tunnel with a train, with a canyon, with a something. I have no idea. No clue. Like,
it's like a laundry list of industrialist achievements. Right.
In a country that I don't even know why it's there, what it's serving, who it's serving, how this could possibly make any sense. But they keep telling us this is his life's work. This is like one of the most richest, you know, industrialists, successful industrialists in the entire world. And this is his like crowning achievement. And I have no idea how it could possibly work or what purpose it serves or why it's placed where it's placed. Just none of it makes any sense. So kind of okay, I guess you can say. But like, if the plot is besides the point, then it begs the question, what is the point? And that is where the Phoenician Scheme runs into a whole lot of trouble. Like a lot of trouble, because you can look at Notorious and say, hey, I will go on this great adventure of intrigue and interest and Cary Grant and all these things. You look at Raiders of the Lost Ark and say, yeah, I'll go with Indiana Jones pretty much anywhere. I enjoy the journey, and these characters are so interesting in their own unique ways. Whereas you go to the Phoenician Scheme and it goes, there's a great TED talk that people can look up from Andrew Stanton, one of the Pixar Brain Trust members. He directed Finding Nemo. He directed WALL-E. I believe he wrote them too. And he has it simple. Make me care. Make me care is one of the fundamental jobs of a storyteller in some way. And there's different ways for people to care. There's different ways for audiences, readers, everyone who engages in art to care. But is the foundational job to make people care emotionally, cerebrally, whatever. I could not find myself to be dragged to caring about Benicio del Toro or his daughter. They wanted to, it seems like Wes Anderson and his partner Roman Coppola on this wanted to play into this very conventional story of the estranged parent reuniting or uniting in some capacity with their child. And they wanted what we understand about these tropes to do the heavy lifting. And they just do nothing at all to earn any sort of emotion, any sort of connection, any sort of growth, any sort of understanding as to why either one of them do what they do, make the choices they make, go along on this wild, zany adventure. It's frustrating to me, and this is a question I have for you, Keir. As a writer, how much can you not say in your narrative? Like, you know, how much can you get away with? When do you cross the line from understating to just not stating anything?
You can get away with saying very, very little if you truly understand all the stakes for your characters, and if you truly understand their emotional journeys, and then those journeys are expressed through their actions. You don't have to say much. And in fact, then the movie could become very good. I mean, stakes are so important. I mean, you talked about, say the Indiana Jones things. Well, maybe he's a little bit incidental, actually, in a weird way, to the true arc of the story. But the stakes in that world are huge, like Nazi conquest, the Nazis, Nazi global domination. So stakes are really important. The stakes here are, we've got this industrialist, Corda, who's got all these business schemes. We understand that he's often very tenuously financed, and so it's about him successfully financing all these schemes. Okay, whatever. Like, we're supposed to just kind of care because he's a lovable scamp who is an eccentric character, and it's just the humor is just so arch. And I do love Benicio del Toro, and he's fun to look at in this. He's fun to watch, but I didn't care about his character's objective in any way. So yeah, getting back to make me care, the stakes are if he can't swindle or strong arm all of these partners into what he's trying to do, then he's not financially successful anymore. He's bankrupt. Like, okay, well, and I don't want to give away the ending. That does kind of play, whether he succeeds or not does play into the ending. But it's a funny moment, you could say, to have a deal-making financier be centered in your movie. I mean, thank God that, I didn't sense in any way that Anderson is trying to do a Trump thing, which a lot of films have been ruined in recent years by people trying to shoehorn Trump into it somehow. But it almost felt like their plot was like, I can imagine Anderson and Coppola sitting up late at night, drinking, brandy in some Parisian cafe and kind of entertaining each other with like the plot points, and then kind of just saying and then sketching up like this framework to just hang these adventures on. Because that's kind of what it feels like. It's just like, what's the bare minimum framework we can come up with that allows us to have these crazy episodic adventures? Like, well, again, I keep talking about Raiders of the Lost Ark. I mean, that's a comic book, right, with cliffhangers, essentially, but they all fit together. Whereas this is like a comic book where it's just like, whatever, it's like each one's a new issue I don't really care about it.
I'll say two things. One, I was thinking about that as well, like the Trump Elon Musk thing. Like, that you really back yourself in a corner, and there's some tone deafness to this in a way that's like, we are going to make this guy who is basically like them, like this scam con artist, who has swindled governments and people, and he started plagues and famine and uses slave labor. Like, it's like, this is more, I don't want to say more salient than ever, because it's not, but like, it is very salient right now that people like this are in power and detestable and doing a lot of damage to our world. So if you're really going to be like, let's make this guy in the end someone we cheer for, you've got a lot of heavy lifting to do. And this movie did nothing to assuage that concern of what the character they were creating in the waters that they were wading in. Like, just absolutely none. And I guess you don't have to pay attention too closely to the ups and downs of the world at our time. But like, I also think there is some sort of, like, again, to use the word tone deafness, that's like, are you sure? Like, are you sure this is the character you want to portray? And, if you do, like, where are you going with this? And it goes to my second point about, like, again, going to the plot. And like you said, they go on these, like, it's a picturesque, like, these adventures that they go on. None of them are very interesting. Like, when they meet Cranston and Hanks, it's like, oh, we're going to have this basketball shoot off, and we're going to go to see this other guy in his nightclub. I don't want to give too much away, but none are really interesting. It's like, you walk away saying, all right, that's it.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I don't get the consequence, and again, I don't need consequence. I don't need end of world stakes, but I also, like, need to walk away from these moments saying, oh, I get what the importance of this scene was and this moment was, and why we went here, why the characters went here. Whereas, like, I just don't understand if this is a story about a father and daughter and this guy maybe turning a new leaf in some capacity. Like, I need to know what the arc is and why these scenes matter. Again, make me care. Like, even if you're not going to make me care emotionally, make me care cerebrally, so I can see that there is a grand design at work here. And I got no sense of the grand design. Why one scene, why you couldn't replace one adventure with another and have it really have any effect on the overall story. I just didn't get it. I didn't get the design, and I wasn't that interested.
So much of it just feels to me like it's just kind of random whims, or just it feels like Anderson wants, like he wants a revolutionary in a beret, so he's going to insert revolutionaries in berets, and 100%. Richard Ayoade is very funny in his scene, but then there's this kind of belabored thing where, the revolutionaries keep shooting their gun at the ceiling of this nightclub, and the nightclub owner keeps going, "Why are you shooting my beautiful nightclub?" And it's just, it wasn't funny, and I didn't care about the nightclub. I didn't really care about the revolutionaries. I feel like, what would it be like to be in Anderson's mind? It feels like he's somebody who is so driven by like visual and aesthetic obsessions that, and I feel like I'm repeating myself here, but I'm just trying to get to the bottom of this. Like, it just feels like he has these images he has to enact, like almost compulsively. He has to bring these images in his mind to life, and it's old magazines, old movies, old books and comic books, or just whatever his inspirations are. He just has to find a way to mash them together and kind of let them work. And I want to say, like, I do think he's a very creative person. I think he's a real original in the way that, even though we're talking about how he's derivative of himself ultimately. Like, he is somebody who is his own guy, and he's created his own thing, and that's an achievement in itself, because how many film directors ever get to that level where you're like, oh, a Wes Anderson film means something. What that's like. It's a short list of directors that have achieved that, but the problem is he hasn't built anything new with that, and now, as it's the copy of the copy of the copy, and it's less thrilling, and it ultimately just feels like it's not about anything other than kind of arch humor, in jokes, and a fun visual aesthetic.
It's funny because, like, in a weird way, somebody we talk about a lot as well is Fincher, like, who also has a very mannered aesthetic and a very particularness about him, like, to say the least. But the thing is, like, he manages still to get a good subject. He's pointing his camera at an interesting subject. Like, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, maybe I didn't love. Like, I still enjoy it. I still think it's interesting. But I also think that, like, there's things he's trying to do narratively. The Killer, like, didn't always work. I liked it, but, like, he's doing some, I don't want to get too deep into The Killer, because I think it's fascinating to talk about. I think it's a very movie of this time in so many ways, but, like, he finds interesting subjects still, and he's doing he's crawled up his own ass in some ways, I need to have a completely CGI background because this building, I just can't have this building here. I need a different building here. And it's like, dude, you got to chill, buddy. While the motorcycle drives by, it cannot be this building. We need $1 million VFX shot here, because we just, it's like, wow, buddy. But, like, Wes Anderson is seemingly about Wes Anderson. Like, Wes Anderson movies are about Wes Anderson movies at this point, and that's such a key distinction, that, like, the Phoenician scheme just seems to be about itself. Like, I don't know what it's about other than, like, wacky antics and, like, things that, like you said, you said it perfectly, like, his obsessions of, like, what he wants to see, like, oh, revolutionaries in a beret, and you're like, here we go again, this is what Wes Anderson does, and it just becomes like a hall of mirrors in a way. Same thing, I enjoyed Michael Cera's character, but, like, it just, I what's the point? I don't know, like, it was clever and it was fun, and Michael Cera did really well with it, but I just can't. That nightclub is so perfect. Why are you shooting up my ceiling? It's like, I don't know. That's your concern? There's people.
None of us cared about it.
Might be people dead here. Like,
None of us cared about the ceiling. None of us cared about the nightclub. None of us cared about the nightclub owner. And honestly, it just wasn't funny. And again, it was kind of like one of those bits where, sometimes like a bad comic will Like, it's funny. This is great quote about music I've always loved. Brian Setzer from the Stray Cats. This goes way back to my days in high school cover bands. He said, and I just love this. He said, sometimes if I'm soloing and hit a wrong note, I'll hit it again just to make it sound like I did it on purpose, which in a guitar solo is kind of charming and whatever. It's gone in a moment. It feels to me like Wes Anderson in this movie, there are several moments that kind of clank, but he like doubles down or triples down by repeating them. And you didn't laugh the first time, and you're sure as hell not laughing the third time.
No, and I think it goes back to, you made me think of something there. It goes back to that whole thing, and then we want to harp on this nightclub scene. But when he's shooting up the ceiling, it's like, why are you shooting my nightclub? Like, your nightclub is being robbed. People are in danger. It reminds me of that Darjeeling Limited scene where he's like, I didn't save mine. It's like people who don't know how to act like human beings. Like, that's not the concern. Is that you didn't. It's not about your failure. There's a dead child in your arms right now. Like, this nightclub, I mean, it's a little less extreme than nightclub, but like, if you're going to do that still, okay, fine. How do you earn it? Like, nothing feels earned. Like, how are you earning these things other than to say, oh, but this is how people in a Wes Anderson movie behave. Duh. And it's like, well, that's not enough. That's not earning it. You can't just come into a movie and be like, well, this is just how people in my world behave. So get on the train and let's go. It's like, no, man. You got to earn your meal. You got to earn that right movie by movie, as every other director does. Like, if Scorsese is just like, gangsters, let's go. It's like, well, no, hold on. What about
in a movie where actions and characters, where actions have consequences, a character being more concerned about his nightclub ceiling than the people around him, like, tells us something about the character and matters and can tell us something about what the director is saying about people or the world that he's created or whatever. But it just, to me, feels like too often he has characters who are heedless of consequences because it's just funny to him. Like Del Toro's character, Zsa Zsa Corda, who is, like, on paper, he's a funny character. And there are moments where his kind of devil-may-care-ness is fairly funny. But it just feels like he is that way because he is that way. And it doesn't, it just doesn't feel like there's anything to it. As you say, it feels increasingly like Wes Anderson films are about Wes Anderson. And I don't know if I have much more to say than that, but like, it feels like there are these kind of airless creations that exist in their own universe. And maybe that's why he can make a film about an evil industrialist who uses slavery to finish some of his big projects. Because it is so divorced from the real world. I don't know much about Wes Anderson personally. I don't know if he reads the paper with alarm or concern, or if he exists in a world of his own fantasy and imaginings. I don't know. It feels more like the latter. And maybe some artists deserve to live that way, and not everything has to respond to the current climate or whatever. But there are times when it's hard to watch, or it's hard to take in certain art in a certain moment of history because of the way we're feeling when we go to the theater. And I'm putting way too much onto this film, but it just feels like it exists kind of like out of time, out of connection with anything. And as they say on Shark Tank, for that reason, I'm out.
No, I agree. And I think that you put it really well, Keir, like, about consequence on a small scale and on a big scale. There's no sense of consequence of like this action and this decision by this character and what they said led to this, and then that led to this. That's like a narrative arc, and it's such a point of curiosity to me because so many people are Wes Anderson diehards and they want to live in these worlds and they're really into it, and that's okay, man, totally cool. Like, I'm not saying there's a lot of aesthetic beauty and really interesting things to look at, but like, I just can't get past that, I guess, solipsism in a way that he possesses in these movies, that like just can't see any sort of consequence, any sort of action having meaning, any sort of word spoken having meaning or carrying into something that coalesces into a whole that makes sense, that takes you on a journey, an arc, and that has consequence. Like, he just kind of skips over all of that. And I just personally, like you, as the Shark Tank would say, like, that's what keeps me away from it. Like, I found Phoenician Scheme just so guilty of these things, of just, like you say, there's just no consequence. It's so lifeless and lacking interest. People want to basically crawl inside Wes Anderson's mind, and I guess that's, I mean, yes, that is fine. It's not for me, though. Like, I don't mind visually seeing what he has to put on the screen, but I also want it to be something of meaning and something of resonance in one fashion or another.
I mean, I love humor and I love absurd humor, but even in a farcical comedy, actions have to have consequences just to keep us invested in the story and drive the story forward. I think about like Raising Arizona, a film that is just like absurd, wacky, cartoonish comedy, but the actions have consequences and there's real soul in it too. It's about a couple's desire to become parents, and they make a bad decision to become parents, and just everything drives from that. And even it's like, I think of like Holly Hunter in that movie laughing with that kind of like that absurd, like exaggerated laughter, and yet you feel her pain too. Like, that's a movie that really captures, it makes you laugh, but it makes you feel. And I feel nothing watching The Phoenician Scheme.
That's a great way to put it. And I agree. I wish I had felt something. I wish I cared about this father-daughter combination. I wish their journey was earned. I wish their journey, we saw the change and the reason for the change and why that change matters. And it's a little frustrating that it's not like a swing and a miss. Anderson, this is a swing in his mind, a swing and a contact. And I just don't agree, because I just don't think that you get to do that in a story. I just don't think you get to say, well, this is how my movies are, so this is what they will be, and everyone just has to kind of like come to me rather than me bringing the story to them.
I know Wes Anderson is not listening to this podcast, but if he were, I would say, get back together with your old screenwriting partner, Owen Wilson. See what magic you can make. Recapture the early days. Recapture the humanity amid the visual perfection, and see what you can do.
I agree. Somebody call up Owen Wilson. Speaking of, hey, we'll always have Tenenbaums, Keir, which also contains one of my favorite Gene Hackman performances, and which is saying a lot because he has many, and obviously we lost him recently, but his role as Royal Tenenbaum was an all-timer, in my opinion.
R.I.P. Gene Hackman, one of the greats. I don't even know how one would begin to rank his performances, but that surely was one of his best, and it's certainly one of my favorite. But the list of his best is longer than some people's entire list of performances.
Yes, I agree. Which, by the way, Keir, I'm going to have on Father's Day. If anybody's in the Chicago area, I'll plug our beloved Music Box. The ultimate Father's Day, I'm going to see Crimson Tide with my kids at the Music Box. Gene Hackman, the ultimate dad movie, Father's Day. I cannot wait.
Hey, true story. My first date with the woman I've been married to for 29 years was Crimson Tide.
No way.
That was our first date. Yeah.
Wow. What a movie. What a way to start. Crimson Tide is legit really good. Like, I watched it a few weeks ago. The movie's awesome.
It's a good movie. And I also found out later she's a fan of submarine movies. Who knew?
Man, good thing.
When we really get romantic, we go see Das Boat.
Man, you were like, I'm marrying this girl.
She's a keeper.
She's a keeper.
Why were you two fighting?
Well, I said that the Kirby Silver Surfer was the only real Silver Surfer, and that the Mobius Silver Surfer was shit. And Benefield's a big Mobius fan, and things got out of hand. I pushed him, he pushed me. I lost my head, sir. I'm sorry. It's never happened again.
It better not happen again. I see this kind of nonsense, I'm gonna write you up. You understand? Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
You have to set an example even in the face of stupidity. Now, everybody that reads comic books knows that Kirby's Silver Surfer is the only true Silver Surfer. Now, am I right or wrong?
You're right, sir.
All right, get out of here.
Yes, sir.
Viewers, listeners, what did you think of the Phoenician Scheme? Are we wrong about Wes Anderson? Feel free to defend him or, tell us how right we are. We like that too. We would love for you to share your thoughts. Either way, we really love hearing from you. Honestly, whether you agree with us or disagree with us, just let us know why. Let us know in the comments or email us at thefilmographerspodcast@gmail.com. We want you to hear your opinion.
Yeah, and again, please check out our Patreon as well. You can find all our episodes. You can find content you won't find anywhere else. It's all there. We're at patreon.com/thefilmographerspodcast.
You can join our community for absolutely free, just to make sure you don't miss a single new episode.
Yeah, and if Patreon's not your thing, remember to take a few seconds to support us wherever you're listening by leaving us a rating or review.
Thanks, as always, to Kevin Lau, our incomparable producer, Gompson, who composed and played our theme music, and Cosmo Graff, who designed our logo and our merch. Join us later this week as Mike takes a trip to the JWCU, which I can only imagine is the John Waters Cinematic Universe. I can't wait.
It's
not?
I kind of wish. No, it is not the John Waters Cinematic Universe. It is the John Wick Cinematic Universe. We're going to be talking about Ballerina, starring Ana de Armas and, of course, Keanu Reeves. She plays, hold on to your hats, an assassin who loves well-choreographed gunplay.
I'm so disappointed. I'm also imagining this is going to be a little bit more shooting than your typical John Waters movie.
A little, slightly, just a little bit.